Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, How 6sense Drove 500% Faster Performance Using SingleStore. My name is Matt Brown, and I'll be your moderator today. Before we begin, just a few logistical reminders. Today's discussion is being recorded, and you are currently in a listen-only mode. You may submit questions throughout the session using the Q&A functionality in the lower section of your Zoom console. I want to quickly introduce our speakers at a high level. Madhukar Kumar is the Chief Marketing Officer here at SingleStore DB. He originally had a background in software engineering, and more recently, he's led product marketing and product management teams in the cloud data industry. Primal Shah is an SVP of engineering and a co-founder of 6sense, a pioneering company in the realm of account-based orchestration. Leveraging the power of AI, big data, and machine learning, 6sense empowers B2B revenue teams to predict and engage with the most prospective buying teams. A couple of quick notes before we start today's session. First of all, if this is your first time joining a SingleStore webinar, we present weekly webinars and workshops demoing data and AI use cases and new technologies. So next week, we are presenting OpenAI for FinTech, building a stock market advisor chatbot. This presentation will spotlight a cutting-edge speech-to-text FinTech solution. It's powered by OpenAI and LangChain. By integrating Kafka for real-time stock ticker streaming data, users can vocally query the stock market and receive immediate answers from live data. If this topic sounds fun to you, feel free to register at bit.ly Stock Advisor Chatbot Webinar. I will put this link in the chat momentarily. We will also share a slide with it. Madhukar, I don't know if you want to pull that slide up so that they can see that QR code, but I will also put this link in the chat for you momentarily. So stay tuned for that. Yeah, it's the, I think the second slide, maybe. Great. And now that you have that up, another note, I want to call out that we have a fantastic support team who is online and watching our Zoom Q&A. They're ready to answer your questions interactively. We're going to try to get to as many questions as they come in. We can also do some live Q&A. I also want to point out, you see here on your screen, that we'd love for you to try out our product today. So in fact, anyone who tries out SingleStore DB today will be entered for a chance to win a new pair of branded AirPods Pros. All you need to do is click that link or type that in from your screen. I will put this in the chat as well in just a moment. And all you'll need to do, you can also scan that QR code or take a photo with your phone. All you'll need to do is log into SingleStore, either a free trial if you're a new user or an existing account if you're already a customer or an ongoing trial. We will check the folks who have logged into that link during the session, and we will announce a winner by the end of today's session. All right, great. Enough preamble, I should say. Welcome, Madhukar and Primal. Madhukar, you now have the floor. Thank you.
Awesome. So before we go to screen share, let's just flip over to this new setup, which Primal and we're talking about is very similar to Between Two Ferns. So given that we are doing webinars so often, I think it makes sense now that we move to a more live version of it too. So I'm really enjoying this. Hopefully we can do a lot more of these going forward. Just to add on to what Matt said, I am personally looking forward to the next webinar, which again we'll show in a second. But imagine talking to your computer and doing things like stock trading, but hopefully not doing stock trading, but pulling up information and doing it all in real time. With LLMs, that's possible, and that's what Akmal is going to show next week. So we would love for you to join, and even if you cannot join, just sign up later on and you can watch the video. All right, so let's get started. Primal, before we get started, you and I have met a few times now, but the thing that always draws a chuckle out of me is when I hear the story of how you discovered SingleStore. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we were in the market to look for the next gen solution to solve or some of our problems, which we'll talk about today. And my co-founder Viral, he was driving up 101, saw your billboard right opposite a competitor of yours, and he's like, "Hey, why don't you check them out?" And that was it. And uh, sometimes old school marketing works.
Do you remember what the billboard said?
No, actually, you guys have really.
I can.
Okay, go ahead.
I can tell you what it said because maybe it's sensitive for you to not talk about it, but it said there's a snowflake billboard on the left-hand side when you're driving into the city, and right after is the SingleStore billboard. So that time it said you just sped past snowflake, welcome to the club. So we always get a chuckle out of it. I think we use it to poke fun at others as well as ourselves as well. And every month we change it. So it's good to know that, somebody saw it.
Yeah, I'm going to drive up today. I'm going to see what it is.
Yeah, we are changing it this Thursday. So stay tuned.
Yeah.
All right. So what I wanted to do today was first, let's go back to our slides. Here we go. So this is the webinar I was talking about. We should try and check it out next week. And before I get started, I think there's just a way to basically ground all of us in this conversation. First of all, if you don't know anything about SingleStore, don't worry about it. Just think of it as what I would call a combination of, actually, another way to look at it would be if Snowflake became like Flash and met and had a baby with MySQL, it would be SingleStore. We started off as MemSQL because it was an in-memory database. It's MySQL wire compatible. And then over a period of time, because it went from in-memory to a unified store that can do row-based tables, but also columnar data. And that data moves from in-memory to SSDs and VMEs, and then finally to block storage. And we were talking to some other customer as well. What always blows me away is that that customer tells us that they're doing 2 terabytes of read and write per second just from the S3 bucket. So the way we call out SingleStore as a definition, it's a way to do transaction analysis or analyze and contextualization of data. So in effect, what it means is you can store the data, you can use transactions as part of SingleStore, but you can also do extremely blazing fast, high throughput, low latency aggregations and analysis, right? So if you're doing aggregate functions and such, then that basically you can run it in a few milliseconds. And what's interesting is, of course, since 2017, we have had several data types, but one of the ways that our customers use is through vectors. And the reason why it's important is now with LLMs, you can do retrieval augmentation generation, where you can do semantic, but within SingleStore, you can actually do a combination of semantic with vectors, along with lexical searches as well. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But what I wanted to just call out first is, of course, we have had quite a few marketing analytics company as our customers. And of course, 6sense is one of the big ones. You also have Heap and others, Outreach, that uses us as well. What I do want to call out is that me as head of marketing at SingleStore, when I discovered 6sense, we ended up purchasing it. And that was much later after you were our customers. And that's because it's just an amazing tool to give you an idea of who you're trying to sell to versus just doing an spray and pray. So with that, what I really wanted you to do, Pramal, is tell us a little bit about the origin story, like what led you to building 6sense and what exactly is the vision of it, but more importantly, for people who don't know, what is 6sense and what can they use it for?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you can see, we started about a decade ago, in 2013, and one of the biggest questions we were trying to answer is, can we tell sales and marketing teams who is interested in buying their product at this time, so that they can focus on those prospects versus doing the spray and pray emails, cold calls, advertising. So it was all about like optimization, saving time, with technology, with software. We started off as a machine learning based product. So that was like, again, 10 years ago, that was the DNA of the company. It's still the DNA. We do a lot of machine learning in the background to understand patterns of who is visiting your website, what are they doing, are these high value pages, are they researching you online, what campaigns they are part of, and eventually bubble that data into our UI or back in your systems, so that when you log in the morning, you can look at the prioritized list of accounts to call, to email. So instead of cold calling, it is warm calling. Instead of cold email, it's warm email. People are, somebody in that company is looking to purchase what you are selling, and you will get a much better response rate. You will spend less time, and you will open more opportunities against those companies. So,
and typically, is it B2B companies or B2C?
Yes.
Or
our product only supports B2B companies.
Got it.
Yeah.
So I can imagine, and I can imagine because we use it too. So this is like real-time information that tells you, hey, here are a few accounts or companies that are interested in your product because they've shown intent by either coming to your website or even outside your website if they've shown interest in purchasing a product in that category.
Majority of your website visitors are anonymous, right? They are not filling out a form, and a lot of, especially if you're a database company, a lot of the people are, techies who are coming to, they don't want to give out their information, right? So how do you figure out, you look at Google Analytics, like, yeah, I got a lot of visitors, but who are they? What companies do they work for? So that's what we do. We have a patented algorithm, go and figure out which companies they work for. And then you can use our product to find the right people, to reach out based on the kind of the personas you sell to. And, they will be responding to your emails.
Got it. So important to differentiate and make the difference that when somebody comes to the website in an anonymized way, we are not looking at their personal information. We just figure out through 6sense that they are part of a certain company. And if you take a look at a bunch of different signals, then this company is more likely to purchase your product. And then you apply your intelligence in order to go and, talk to them.
Absolutely.
Correct?
Yes.
Got it. All right. So,
yeah, so, these are kind of the two personas that that our product supports today. So marketing, generally marketing is doing advertising, emails, campaigns, webinars, etc. And sales folks are focused on their patch of accounts, whether it's BDRs who are getting inbounds, or account execs who are in their accounts on a daily basis. They get a prioritized list. They can figure out the right people, the personas of people who are engaged within their accounts. Should we send out more emails? Should they be put in marketing campaigns? Some of it can be done, manually. Some of it can be done with intelligence with our product, right? And that's kind of what we have today. We have a lot of third-party intent data along with people who are coming to your website. So is somebody researching SingleStore versus one of your competitors? What are they reading about you elsewhere? What are the keywords that they are reading about? So we get all that, convert the signals into a score or a stage, and then put it in front of you. The marketing and sales people, they operate on the same data, right? There are no disparate systems, even though you have different CRMs and maps and people own different things. But within 6sense, you have a unified layer from your first party data to your third party data to even running advertising campaigns. Everything is put in one place so that you can make those decisions.
So, as a marketer, one thing that keeps coming up, I know the answer, but for the benefit of the audience as well, tell us a little bit about how removal of third-party cookies is going to affect, this industry in general?
Yeah, so it does affect some of the things that we do. Like obviously, if you are tracking someone or advertisers are tracking people across different websites, that's not going to work.
Right.
When we did an analysis of what impact it would have on our product, we do use cookies, but not as much as we use IPs, and we understand your behavior based on our algorithm. So we would have less of an impact from cookies going away, but I can imagine based on what providers you're using or what you're doing with cookies and your heavy reliance on them, you will have to. I'm sure you're already working on living in the cookieless world and figuring out a different way to serve your customers.
Right. So one quick segue, because you mentioned that for scoring for both the behavioral and intent, you use machine learning models, and you've been using for last 10 years. What's your take on the large language model? How is that affecting or has affected your thinking, or where do you think the world would be headed when instead of your own not personal, but your own trained ML models, would you be using an LLM, or we are still very far away from it? What's your take on this?
Yeah, so we have a lot of different features in the product that use different kinds of models. So if we are trying to score someone based on the intent, we won't be using LLMs. We use one of those fancy GBMs or neural nets or something to score that stuff. If we are doing profile modeling, which basically says, is this the right company that I sell to based on my past opportunity history, right? They would not be using LLMs, but we use LLMs for a product which we call conversational email. And
I see.
That is replying to your email, it's reading your email, it's understanding what to do, and then you can have prompts and stuff in them. So yeah, we have a vast variety of modeling techniques and tools built around different use cases.
Got it. So if I understand correctly, you're saying the ML models would still be used for scoring, and because that needs to be far more accurate and far more precise and valuable. But for contextualizing or for maybe doing personalized messages, that's where the LLMs can be used for.
Yeah, and one of the new use cases we're thinking about is, in sales intelligence, you as a sales rep, you log in and it would basically summarize your next steps for you versus you having to figure out from the various data points you see on the screen, what should I do next?
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. All right, so yeah, tell us a little bit more about 6sense. And
yeah, so the numbers speaks for themselves, right? Because we are able to identify your prospects, in advance of you doing it yourself, you have higher chance of hitting up those people before they're talking to your competitors. You have more opportunities that you can open against them. If you are earlier in the sales cycle, there's a higher chance that you can influence and win more. You can close bigger deals and, effectively also shorten the time to sell, because, you are hitting up with the right message at the right times.
Yeah, this is incredibly useful. Like one thing I often wonder about, and this is anecdotal, is let's say me personally, if I go to somebody's website or I'm trying to figure out the pricing or trying to figure out if they have a demo or not, if I hear from them within the next one day, I'm more likely to respond versus 7 days from now, somebody responds. Do you have some data, or do you see some sort of a pattern where the time to respond, whether it is correlated to how likely you're...
Absolutely. So we have internal SLAs for our inbounds too.
I see.
We call it, because of 6sense, we say it's 6 minutes, but somewhere in that range, right? Like when somebody fills out a form, it gets routed to the right BDR and they got to reach out back to you in 6 to 10 minutes interval, so that you're like, oh yeah, there's something here. I just, when you're in the zone and you get a response back, you're more likely to respond back to that email.
Yeah, very cool. I think this kind of leads to real timeness of responses and customer experiences. It reminds me that very recently somebody sent me like a link to a document on LinkedIn. And as soon as I clicked on it and I viewed it, I immediately got another message saying, "Hey, I saw that you just saw your document. Do you have any questions?" And I thought that was a little bit too aggressive. But if I'm potentially searching for something and I'm looking for an answer, then yes, I would love for somebody to reach out to me right away and say, "Hey, is there anything we can help with?"
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about the overall tech stack, right? How did you start off? What led you to the different database choices? And then finally to where you are right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So, this is the 10-year journey. So, I want to kind of start it from the very beginning where we're like small, you are just doing, proof of concepts with customers.
Mhm.
You don't have crazy amounts of data. So, to be clear, we started off with a big data stack, which we still use today. So we do all our, data processing. So we get like everything from your website, third-party intent data, your CRM map, advertising that we run. And this is like hundreds of gigabytes of data a day. So we got to process it and we got to give you the freshest data the next day when you log in.
And
Right?
this is per customer.
I'm just talking across the board.
I see.
Because there is, your own website, which is like put in its own silo, but then there's intent data that comes for everybody together, and then we segregate it, right?
Mhm.
And we kind of knew on day one that we have to use like a big data system to process the data. But then eventually when you want to serve it to the end customer, those systems are not meant to be fast and, responsive. So that's where we started off with MySQL. Like, okay, we got a few customers, let's put the data in. It takes a few hours to do the ETL, but at least, we know what MySQL can do and let's get it out. So we did it. And as you can see, as we started getting more popular, we're like, oh, we need a better solution. The ETL itself takes so much time, even though the product is responsive, not the right solution. Went to Redshift, again, we were an AWS shop, easy to spin up, try, did that. ETL was much faster, but there wasn't too much concurrency, right? More people came in, things would slow down, and there were some other nuances. So we're like, okay, let's take the next step. This is a time we were also rethinking, hey, do we need a much simpler solution along with our big predictive solution, which takes a longer time to, give value to someone. So we're like, okay, we're building a new product or a scaled down version of the product. Let's rethink. And that's where Presto, Trino were really popular. Federated query engines, you can, look at all our data in Hadoop, join it in MySQL, give the results to the customer. Pretty good, pretty fast. So we built a new product. This is like 2017-ish on top of Presto, which is now also, there's a fork of it called Trino for people who are not aware. And that's how we got started with our new product. We got a lot of customers on it. Then we built our new sales intelligence, or new at that time, the new sales product. And the Presto based marketing product was more about, hey, I want to look at analytics across a group of customers together, or a group of prospects. I want to see how much they're, how many times they've come to my website and the trend chart over the last 30 days. So it was more like an analytical use case, and we use Presto for it. But when you go to the salesperson, they're focused on that one account.
Right. So and it's a point lookup.
It's a point look. Exactly. You want to see what that account has done on your website and how many campaigns they have been, and etc. So which wasn't the strength of Presto, right? So then we had to go to more like a NoSQL age-based solution. Again, very easy to use. We had some experience around it. So we, in a couple of months, we figured out how to get our data in there and, we build the product. But as you can see, we have data now.
You can know it's live because you can hear the sirens.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to disturb. But
no.
So yeah, please finish your thought. I have a few questions here.
Yeah. So as you can see, right, there is a HBase at great speed, but then data was duplicated in HBase. So anytime we wanted to reprocess or do something that a customer wanted to change, we had to make sure that the data is consistent in all the different data stores. So that was some work, right? Make sure there are no support tickets around it. So those are. So we still have some of this going on, and as we migrate up, we can talk about.
Sure.
Yeah.
So couple of very, I would say, just out of my own curiosity, MySQL is purely transactional, right? So it's for read and writes, but mostly write optimized. And when you go to Redshift or HBase and Trino, it's more storage optimized, right? And it's more batch analytics. So did the format of the data also change as you move from MySQL to HBase to Redshift, or they were always row-based schemas?
Yeah, they're pretty similar. I think end of the day, we were apart from HBase, we were just trying to run a SQL query and just get the answer right as fast as possible. And MySQL, you can load data in like small batches faster, and you can do it throughout the day. But you want to load a big chunk of data, it takes a while. You can query it fast, maybe after that, but it takes a while to load 15 million rows or 30 million rows, which is kind of the volume we had to. And Redshift, it was fast to do that, but it's kind of slow to read.
And how were you doing the ETL? Were these tools that you have built?
Yeah, this is all in-house, just figure out the best way that their product likes to load data in and just run that script.
And for MySQL, when you hit the, kind of a ceiling, so to speak, is it, I'm assuming it was still in clusters, like you were still managing your clusters?
Yeah, this is like AWS or something. Yeah.
So was it like the horizontal scaling that didn't scale up, or like what was the main? Was it the transactional, the response times that started to slow over a period of time?
So we still use MySQL for our small data workload, right? Right. So who is our customer? What are the packages that they have? Who are the users? But when you look at the big data workload, which is I want to look at last 30 days of who's been to my website, that is not possible.
Yeah.
So that is where we tried all these different solutions.
Got it. All right. So then
So as you can see here, we use Trino and HBase from the previous slide. The Trino cluster supports the marketing and sales use cases. So even for the sales product, we still have like a dashboard, right? When you land on the product, you would see for your accounts what is happening. But when you click through to a specific account, you would like have to do that point queries, and then you would like go to HBase and like retrieve that data. And then the marketing product, as I said before, very much I want to look at 50 accounts, 100 accounts, 10,000 accounts together to understand the trend, what have they been doing, etc. So that's where Trino really shines. Trino is able to read from Hadoop and MySQL, right? So we did not have to do any ETL, while in HBase we had to do ETL. So again, there was data duplication between data sitting in like Hadoop and in HBase, and any reconciliation, we had to do it twice.
So I was asking you before this webinar because I didn't know. So Trino, just so that I understand, it's a query engine, which is a fork of Presto. And underneath that query engine, it's connected to different databases. So you can run one SQL query and join different data and get it.
Absolutely.
Got it.
Yeah.
And HBase you were just using for very large amount of data that you were just putting in there for.
Yeah, so it's very much point lookups or like range lookups. I want to look at this one account and, very fast at doing that, right? Very much like a NoSQL in the NoSQL space.
Got it. And then, so tell me a little bit about, what I think you already hit upon certain pain points and requirements, but what was going through your team at that time? Like, what are the key pain points that you were trying
to solve? And I would want to go back one slide for a second and look at this last point, right? Summarization and resummarization. So what that meant is if I wanted to get that data for the marketing person for the last 30 days, I could not really do it in real time based off the raw data.
I see.
So I would have a bad job which would process that 30 days and store it in a different table, right? And then sometimes I would have something else on top of it that's getting summarized. So if anytime we change the raw data, we would have to make sure that all the summaries were updated.
Wow.
And they had to be updated every day. So something like a count of people is easy to do at a daily level. But if you want to do uniques over last 30, you have to recompute every day. You cannot do uniques on a daily basis.
So the query is more like select count of last 30 and then summarize it. And then every time in that, every day you recompute it because your last 30-day period
The window
changing.
keeps changing. Yes, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. So last 30, last 90, last 7, this week, this month, right? So you have to keep storing those cuts. And I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with doing that.
Yeah. And so when you do that, then were you also caching it, or was this all happening from the user perspective in real time? Like if I'm the marketing person and say, show me the last 30, was it running the query at that time, or were you also doing some
Yeah,
caching?
so no, I had to do it in the data pipeline before you ever hit it, right? So you are always reading the summarized data.
I see.
Yeah.
And before the data pipeline completes, if I run that query, it'll be
then you would be seeing yesterday's snapshot.
data.
Yes.
I can tell you that as a marketer, I've seen so many tools where this is a real problem. Like even in things like Google Analytics, like if I want to look at real-time data, I want to see how many people are on the website right now and get more detail. It's not there because of the similar issues, which is last 7, last 30.
Yeah. And those guys have built like
Yeah,
different levels of systems to answer those questions.
Even then, it's not real time.
Yes. Yeah. So going back to this, right? When we're like, okay, what is the problem today? It's not scale, as I put on the previous slide. It's not like I cannot serve more customers, but can I serve them faster? Can the UI be more responsive? Can I build new products faster? Right? Can be new features also build faster? Like I need a new dashboard. Does it take a data pipeline work to get that dashboard built so it's really fast? Or can someone figure out what SQL to run and maybe just optimize that SQL to get the product out? When you want to build a system like that, you got to figure out, based on a past experience, can I ingest all our customers' data in there really fast? And then so both reads and writes have to be good. There cannot be a trade-off. And we were growing pretty fast starting the beginning of COVID, and still doing. So we're going to look like 3 to 5 years in the future to say, what is the product that's going to support us? I really like the single source of truth, which means that every team who is building different features, working on the same data set, their answers are always going to align. And they don't have to do that additional work from before to make sure that the raw data changes. They have to make sure their data is correctly up to date, and that additional processing time and money can be saved. If you go to the cloud, you really want something that you are not maintaining. Like we have spent, years managing and working on Hadoop and optimizing and, tweaking and tuning, and that's fine. But is there something that we can get as a commercial product that comes with expertise and support, and they can manage the hardware while we can work on like how to make that software work more optimally for us? And then eventually, get some BI connectivity. So anything that we build internally for our data analysts and execs and everybody to use can connect to the same data store again. Once we get single source of truth of data, like a lot of things get easier. Nobody is like fighting about whether Y numbers are different in different dashboards, right? So those were kind of like the needs of the day when we were looking at, what if we need a next gen solution. And we sent out RFPs, we did a lot of POCs for several months, looked at different vendors, and were testing at a scale which people generally don't do in a POC, but we're like,
Sure.
okay, we need to make sure that I can't, I can't just load data for 5 customers. I can load it for 1,000 and make sure it's working at the right scale. Like, what are the challenges we'll face in the future? So, we were trying to replace a system which works but has some nuances with a system that is really working, and now people are like really excited about it. So that was like the whole journey. It took about 18 months before we, you know, decided what vendor to go with.
How long was the POC? Just curious.
We spent about like I would say 3 to I would actually it's 5 to 6 months with you.
And I'm assuming you did like a bake off with a few other databases as
We
well?
did, yes, right. So we were testing again the same thing, how fast we can ingest and how fast we can read at scale. Wrote a bunch of stress test, load test scripts to.
And without naming any names, but did you see a massive difference in the performance, or was it like a step function?
Yeah, so there was I would say you were like 2x faster than like the next person. But what really also drew us to SingleStore is HTAP capabilities.
So transaction and
Correct.
analytics.
Exactly. We wanted to have some tables where customers are interacting with in real time, but we're also loading big chunks of data in the background so that they can read from it. And it has to be in the same data store, cannot be in different places, which was the case earlier, right? Also like looking for a innovative company that is like moving at a fast scale or a fast speed. So
Good looking CMO was
exactly, yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. So those were like, along with the performance, we're also looking for a great partner to, take us to a multi-year journey.
So this almost reads like what somebody in marketing would put
What exactly?
in terms of what differentiates SingleStore. But what draws my attention is the single source of truth, right? And I've been in this field long enough. I've worked in other databases company that shall remain unnamed. We try to solve the single source of truth through several different ways. And of course, there are like companies like Informatica and others that have been trying to solve this problem for a very long time. When you say single source of truth, do you mean like a primary key of an identity, or do you mean every data that's coming in, you want to have just one store where it has its primary key and everything else then just feeds off of that? Like, what was the thinking behind the architecture? And is it an architecture decision, or is it like a technology decision, or is it a combination of both?
So what I mean by single source of truth is there is only one copy of something in the system. So let's say all your website visitation data that we get. If I want to build a different report, there's nobody should make a copy of that because it works better for them because it's stored differently.
I see. So if I understand this correctly now, earlier you were moving data around because you were trying to do analytics and also do transaction, and that leads to copies and data integrity issues. But if that main source already could do transaction and analytics, then you don't make copies, and you're basically serving internal and external users.
Yeah, so that's one piece, and the second piece is you are the person building the marketing product, and I'm working on the sales product, and we are building similar dashboards.
Got it.
And our numbers should match.
Yeah.
But you have to answer the question differently, so you store the data differently because it's faster for you.
Got it.
And now we have 2 different sets of data.
Beautiful. Yeah. So tell us now a little bit about the new architecture.
So now what has changed is we still have our big data pipelines on Hadoop, which do all the crazy processing and machine learning and like, terabytes and all that data stuff that I told you about. And we still have our MySQL, small data store telling us who is the customer and etc. But at the end of the pipeline, we load the data in SingleStore, and that's it. There's one copy of it, and then all the different products. And as from the previous slide, you see that there's a new ops product that's going to be launched.
Yeah.
again, launched on the
Tell
same
us
set
more
of data. Right?
tell us more about that ops product.
Yeah, so this is targeted towards RevOps, so basically marketing ops, sales ops, and there are two flavors of it. One is data workflows, so uh, enrichment of data, cleansing, um, doing lead to account matching, creating new accounts in your system, buying new contacts, etc. that
Got
you
it.
can automate. So somebody fills out a form on your website. They put in some of their information, like the mandatory fields, but not the other ones, because you want to keep your form the smallest so that you have less bounces, right? I'm sure you know
Yep.
all those problems. But now that information comes to us, we can enrich or fill out any missing information, and based on which company they work for or their location and your routing rules, send it to the right BDR in their queue so that they can reach out
Nice.
to them automatically, or not or, but you can now put them in a LinkedIn campaign or an advertising campaign, and everything connected through a canvas. So
That's
you're
beautiful.
not doing it by hand, but this is just working behind the scenes for you. But
So,
yeah,
quick question there, Pramal. Just to understand the overall, I have two questions. Magnanimity of the data size. How big is the data size of the data that's being generated and pushed into this single source of truth? And the second question I had was, are you using the single store pipelines to pull in the data, or are you using your own tools to push data in?
we are actually using two features that you have. One is the pipelines, which is pulling data of S3, and we don't have the real-time streaming yet. We have like batch loads. So we use pipelines for that. We pull data and then we stop the pipelines, and then we use the load data feature that you have.
I see.
So it's a combo depending on what we're doing, eventually moves to load data.
Got it. And the pipeline feature compared to the ETL that you were doing, is it a difference of night and day? Is it similar? Like how fast or
Pipelines
slow?
I mean, I don't have an apples to apples comparison because we're loading data in like HBase before, which is a tighter integration with Hadoop. So it, all of the processing was happening outside of HBase, and you're just loading the data in there. But eventually when I look at pipelines and the performance and the capabilities, I mean, it's pretty fast. Like we are loading probably actually, I would say like 10-20 terabytes of data a day.
Got
like,
it.
with the combination.
And then we were talking about this earlier too. So 10-20 terabytes of data coming in, and where I was going with this is, within pipelines, if you're using it, then it does a extremely fast commit because it's in memory. So you can query the data while it's in flight. Looks like that's not a use case here.
Yeah, it's not, right? Because a lot of the traffic is long tail.
Sure.
You come at random times. Yeah.
And once the data is in and the data becomes slow moving, do you offload it over a period of time, or it stays there within SingleStore?
Yeah, so right now we have a pretty good retention policy, about like 2 years of data that will stay in, but because of bottomless DB or your S3
Bottomless
batch
storage, yeah.
exactly. We don't have to worry about how much is kept on the disks and in memory and all that stuff, right? Like archive data is sitting in S3. If somebody queries it, it's downloaded. There's obviously some penalty, but that's okay.
Yeah, that's even for me personally, I feel that's a pretty cool feature because your storage is disaggregated from your compute. So I can shut down the workspace and still have the storage in S3. And later on, if I want to do some work with it, I can bring back some of the workspace. Awesome.
Yeah.
Anything else before we move to the next slide?
Yeah. So, basically, as you can see, all the products now building on the same source of data, right? And build faster. You can give features, and there won't be any discrepancy. So the new ops product is being built, will come out by the end of the year.
So I do have one question in the sense, a lot of the data, it seems like, or most of the data is structured. does the structure of the data that gets generated change only when you have new products, or is it more frequent? Or is that not a issue at all?
Yeah, we try to keep it pretty structured and like like a nice ER diagram, and we don't do a lot of JSON and stuff right now.
I see.
That's something we will look at as more use cases evolve.
Got it.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, we wanted something that would change how we build and how customers use the product, and the the numbers are here. Most of our pages or views or whatever dashboards, they run much faster, even over larger time periods than before. And this is running on top of raw data, no longer summarized data that we talked about earlier, which we had to do. So we will be saving money on like that summarizations and re-summarizations. And
so those last 7 or last 30 days, you're doing it runtime in the
exactly.
fly versus doing it and then storing it.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Right. We can build things faster, new dashboards, new queries exactly on top of SingleStore without having to worry about how to structure the data for each page for a particular case and like build a data pipeline around it, or how to store the table differently. So that helps us give out features to customers faster. And at the end of the day, we are going to run smaller data pipelines because we will not be doing all that summarization and taking one table, converting it 5 different ways. So it helps us save money and not run maybe equivalent hardware. So this is a very good estimate of where we'll end up with once the whole transition is done.
Got it. So maybe let's now get to a lot more, I would say, fun part, which is, as a practitioner with so much of depth in an experience in using different kinds of data and databases, what's your take on where the world is headed in terms of just the data store, data structure? Where do you think the architecture is evolving into? I've heard a lot about, and we were talking about it prior to the webinar, like things like, okay, you have different domains now emerging. There's Airflow, Airbyte, and then there is dbt, and there's a lot of talk around semantic layer and contextual layer. What's your take on all of this?
Yeah, so I look at like kind of databases in 2 different flavors, and maybe 3 now. One's the big data transactional things like the BigQuery, Snowflake, SingleStore, then the NoSQL world of I want to do X and I want to do it very fast, and I need to do a lot of work to do that. And then third is upcoming, which is the vector databases, which is very much for LLMs. I think end of the day, there's going to be people are seeing a mass explosion of their data. Like we are a very multi-tenant environment, right? We want more customers, and more customers come in, our data sizes keep on increasing, and the eventual product that we want to use should support that kind of a workload. But we also want performance from it. So we also have to select like something that is like right in the middle of price performance ratio, and also the big scale that we want to use. I think those like the MySQL's world, like we are way above that, and like a lot of companies don't have that problem anymore. They're not trying to figure out between MySQL or Oracle or a SQL Server like what to use. They're trying to figure out what do I use for my huge data sets. Yeah,
got it. So you mentioned 3 different portions of data space. So there's the large data where you're doing analytics, and that is moving from a point in time to real time, like just like what we talked about. Then there's, of course, the transactional pieces that you talked about, where the MySQLs and the Mongos of the world live. And then, of course, the third one is vectors. Fun fact, SingleStore does all 3. So how important, or do you think it's not important for companies to consolidate that, or think of it from the point of view that you did, which is I want to have one single copy And instead of doing pre-processing and pre-compute of all the analytics and doing it in point in time, I want to do it in real time. And by the way, I want to mix and match vectors plus JSON plus SQL and analytics in the same query.
Yeah, it is very important. I think end of the day, you will not have as many experts in different areas of like the products that you're trying to use. So
Yeah.
If you can use one system, right? Tech consolidation is a thing. Stack consolidation is definitely a thing these days, right? So we kind of want to also go into that. Now, obviously, you could not have something done at an expert level, but it might be very good for what you want to do. And that's fine.
Yeah, and I don't, maybe I chose wrong words. I don't mean to say that everybody should look at consolidation, but the fact that that choice is available, it's kind of like, the whole classic cliched example of an iPhone. I used to have a different camera, which I still do if it's for professional photography, but now I have the camera, the GPS, the calculator, the email, and Word doc all in the same thing. And if it does most of the things in one single place, why do I need to copy all of that in 10 different places and then try to access it and make data integrity issues? So that's kind of what I meant. But I do feel like, from a single store perspective, we can both augment as well as if you were to.
Absolutely. And I think we're talking to your team to even do like all the vector stuff in it. So, that's going to be our next gen stuff happening on SingleStore.
Yeah, and in fact, we were talking about this yesterday too. We have our first developer conference at the Chase Center on October 17th, where we are dedicating an entire day to talk about how you can build generative AI applications using RAG or retrieval augmented generation, and also deploy it in a bunch of different platforms like AWS, GCP, and whatnot. But in that, we would be announcing a bunch of new stuff related to vectors as well. So we'd love for you to be part of that.
Absolutely.
And, there'll be some very, very big announcements that we are about to make. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, same here.
I know we have about 8 minutes, and I do want to, store some time for answering questions from the audience as well. One more quick thing from, for my own curiosity perspective. In terms of deployment and in terms of maintenance, how hard or easy it is to be able to scale SingleStore? Like if you decided tomorrow to go from, and what is the current amount of data that you have?
I think we have about like 100 terabytes. Yeah.
Okay, so let's say you went from 100 terabytes to a few petabytes. How easy or hard is it? And have you thought about what that scalability looks like?
It's not that hard. I think we can scale up the right throughput by vertically scaling that up. And since a lot of data is sitting in S3, you don't have to really worry about how much data you have, as long as you can get it in a timely fashion. And then on the read side, you can horizontally or vertically scale up the read workspaces and hit your SLAs.
Got it. And so, if you were a developer yourself, or if you were to, let's say, do this from scratch in a brand new company, what advice would you give to fellow CTOs, head of engineering, when they're thinking about their data access and data storage in general? And this doesn't have to be a SingleStore plug. This is a genuine question about what advice would it be for?
Yeah, so I think what we have learned over the years is your company will be in different phases, and different phases will need different products. So you got to think at least 2 years in the future to see what your growth patterns will be and what is the right solution for you. And you have to constantly evaluate, monitor, evaluate, improve, and think about solutions that are horizontally, vertically scalable to fit your patterns. Sounds pretty generic advice, but we are normally caught up in like, hey, I know this, I'm going to use this product and it will get me somewhere. But you got to take a step back and think about but I need to get to Y instead of like X. So how can I get there, and what are the different solutions? So the database market is evolving very quickly, and there are a lot of new solutions that you never heard of. And
Yeah.
so you got to keep looking out.
So think longer term and have the ability to plug and play different databases. I'm just reading in between lines.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I see Matt is back online, so I'm assuming that's because he have a few questions that he wants to throw at us, or specifically you. So go for it, Matt.
All right, sounds good. We'll try to get to as many as we can in the last few minutes, but we might miss some. But the first question is from Albert Lau. Is it possible to get a more technical view of how the 6sense environment is set up? I'm curious how they have the MySQL plus SingleStore working.
Yeah, so MySQL is our what we call the small data store, right? Which is storing names of all the customers and all their users and what licenses they have, and all that, you know, metadata about people and the customers, while SingleStore stores all the data about them, like everything that has happened on their website, in their CRM, marketing automation. So when we are in terms of scale, we are talking about like 100 or 1,000 to 10,000 times more data in like SingleStore than MySQL. Eventually, we be using SingleStore as the MySQL replacement, but that is a transition that we'll work on in the future.
And I would quickly add, if you're looking for a much deeper dive tech conversation, there are people far smarter than me who can walk you through the architecture within a solution engineering team. So just send us an email at team@singlestore.com, and we'll be able to set up a meeting with you to go over your questions. Go ahead, Matt.
Good stuff. Here was another good one. From a developer's perspective, how does SingleStore compare to legacy data engines in terms of features, and especially when it comes to supporting low latency interactive queries? And are there any specific tools or integration that SingleStore offered which were particularly beneficial for 6sense's operations?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the tools, you mentioned pipelines, which are really powerful way of getting data into SingleStore. There's obviously a lot of BI connectivity that is supported right out of the box. There are many CDC tools that you have partnerships with
Archeon,
to move data in and out of SingleStore, and you're building more in-house. I know some stuff is coming in December, so I won't break the surprise, but in terms of moving data in and out, there are a lot of different options, including Kafka for real time, and then pipelines and other stuff for batch.
Yeah, and that's perfect answer. The only thing I add to that is every time you see a MySQL connector, that works with SingleStore because it's wire compatible. So your SQL statements and connections, all of that should work if it's working with MySQL.
Yeah, and regarding the low latency queries, I mean, we have seen, as it was on the slide before, a lot of improvements in reading off like the raw data versus reading off the processed data. So we are giving a customers a better experience while doing less processing.
Awesome. Good stuff. We might have time for one or two more questions before we wrap up and announce that AirPods winner. Are you looking at real-time data ingestion and real-time analytics on things such as clickstream data, etc.?
We will be. I think the first phase of the product was to have some apples to apples, migration, and then we'll be adding more features that will be more real-time focused for some of our use cases.
Good stuff. With the last minute, Madhukar, unless there's anything else you want to get to, should I get to the wrap up? Yeah,
I mean, the only plug I would make at this point is go to singlestore.com/now. That's where you can get an early bird 50% discount on the ticket for the Gen AI conference that we're doing at Chase Center on October 17th. And again, anything that we might not have spoken about or we have missed, feel free to send us an email at team@singlestore.com, and we're happy to get on a call with you and explore your specific use cases.
Great. I just put that link in the chat that Madhukar mentioned, the link to the real-time AI developers conference, the way that you can get that discount code. Just click that link that I just put into the chat. And now I can move on to the final announcements. Today's AirPods winner goes to Albert Loud, lead database engineer at Nucleus Security. I recognize that name. We've actually done a webinar with Albert. Hopefully we can do another one with you sometime soon. Congrats, Albert. If that's not you, don't give up. We're going to announce one more AirPods winner by the end of today for anyone who has tried out SingleStore. So give that a try. Keep an eye on your email for this video recording as well. Thank you, Madhukar and Primal, for an awesome presentation today. And thank you to our audience for joining. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
All right.